Okay, my CalPERS question, Francis from Laco. I heard you talking to the ladies back here about a retro adjustment to an individual who had multiple pay rates. And your solution is to create multiple appointments. But if they only had one appointment to begin with and regular pay was reported for those multiple pay rates, they're all under the same appointment. How do we get a retro to accept even if we created additional appointments?
So this question's been posed by only schools and generally not public agencies. It's something I'm going to have to take back to the payroll team and Renee. Possibly she's already left me. I feel so abandoned. Oh, there she is. So the issue is this. My CalPERS was created with a concept that we have an appointment for every single position. And I, over the last year, have become like a SME about what an appointment is. So technically speaking, if you have a district and a person works as a secretary and a janitor, we had originally requested that you create two separate enrollments. Each enrollment will create a separate appointment, and then we can tie payroll, earnings, and contributions to a specific appointment. Well, when we launched this with Keith Riddle and Anthony Sweeney back in 2010-11, you guys threw rocks at us and said, are you out of your mind? Because we cannot store that much data for 5, 6, 7 appointments per district. That's when we introduced the division ID, and now you guys can report different pay rates underneath the one division. Well, now with the enhanced business rules with payroll, that's kind of coming back and kicking y'all in the rear end a little bit, because the business rule for retroactive salary adjustment says you cannot report a different pay rate when a retroactive salary adjustment when the pay rate is equal to or less than something that's previously reported. Because retroactive salary adjustment, unlike legacy, really should be for a period of time where there was a decision made saying, back to this time, we got an increase in pay rate, and here's the difference. So the problem now comes, and you can have technically a pay rate of $10, and you made a prior pay period adjustment saying, it really should have been $15, so now $15, and then if you submit the retroactive salary adjustment, it has to be 15.01 or greater. It has to be a penny more than what was originally reported. For schools, what I'm finding out is that they have a problem because you have $10 and $15, and you're making adjustments like this through pay period. Well, the retroactive salary adjustment's going back to maybe your principal or whoever it is, right? And they were only making the $10, and we need to bring them up to $13. Well, 13 is less than 15. So the system's erring out on those retroactive salary adjustments, saying it cannot be equal to or less than the highest reported pay rate. That's a business decision made by payroll, and I think they worked with Comp Review to say that's how it is, because retroactive salary adjustments really should be greater than the last posted pay rate. So your workaround for right now is to create, as the system was originally designed, multiple appointments so you can start tracking pay rate to an appointment, and then you can report the RSA transaction to the lower pay rate, and it will not error out. Well, every time I say that, you guys go back to 2010-11 when you want to throw rocks at me. So I have to go back and work with the development team and our payroll unit to see, is there a way that we can run a business rule validation and work with Comp Review and everybody else internally at CalPERS to say, if we can identify that a pay rate was 10 and a pay rate was 15, and it's a positive increase and the adjustment is to the lower pay rate, can we let that go? The reason why they did the business rule is because a lot of employers were using RSA transactions the wrong way. They're using it to reduce earnings. They're using it to back out and re-report. So we have to have some restrictions on how it's used, but there may be an opportunity for us to look at, is the RSA transaction positive in nature, and can we match it to a pay rate reported when two different pay rates are reported on the same appointment? And that's a conversation I'll have to take back to payroll and the rest of the team.
I have a second question on SIP reporting. CalPERS has requested that districts that provide SIP or offer SIP report direct to CalPERS. The problem with districts in that they may have multiple payroll cycles that they pay SIP participants on. When they go to upload their file, they only have one payroll file. And if a cycle issues subsequent to that first payroll cycle, they can't upload that file. They have to manually create it as an adjustment file.
So that's and I'm just new to the SIP, so the file itself should be an SIP program file. I know that our SIP unit works with our payroll unit to get in sync a payroll schedule to allow them to report. So what I would recommend is if you have one of those districts that are erroring out, they should call our SIP unit and say, we don't have a defined payroll schedule that matches our PERS payroll one. Can you work with the PERS payroll team to get us on the same schedule? I think they can then change it or work with it to get it in so it no longer errors out.
They have, and they said there's no way that they can, the only way that they can get for example, okay, let's say they have 2 payroll cycles.
Mm-hmm.
One cycle issues on the 5th of the month following the reporting period, and one issues on the 10th of the month following the reporting period. They're both for the same accrual period or pay period. The one that gets posted on the 5th closes that payroll cycle. So when they have to go and upload the payroll that issues on the 10th of the month, that payroll cycle's closed.
SIP is something new to the Customer Account Services Division, and I can work with their manager to figure out how to do this. It's something I haven't been involved with. I know the only involvement I've had with SIP is that the districts, even though they're the contract holder, so they're the one responsible for reporting it, they have asked that the county office report, and we can change the data ownership. Or we can build a business partner relationship, or they have a TPA that reports and we can build that. Outside of that effort, in regards to payroll schedules, I haven't been involved, so I can work with their manager and the payroll manager to figure out how we can fix this payroll schedule discrepancy issue. Can you send me an email with the problem? Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
I'll be around during lunch. I thought I got kicked off.
I can ask you later.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so, oops, there we go. So next, Ruben is going to give an equally short update on circular letters.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ruben Jimenez, CalPERS staff at the Customer Account Services Division. And I stand here before you before lunch and your bathroom break. I'm here to talk to you today regarding the implementation of IRS Proposed Regulations for Public Agency Determinations under 414D. You may recall CalPERS sent out CL 200-1312 back in April 20th, 2012, and it's in your packet. Subsequently to that, CalPERS presented an agenda item on this topic in February 2013. What this is about is new agencies coming into our governmental benefit programs. For some background for you, the IRS and the Treasury Department released draft regulations in late 2011. These regulations provided a framework and criteria for determining an entity that would qualify under a governmental entity. So what is a true governmental entity? The criteria was broken into 2 different categories. The first category is identified as major factors, and there are 5 of them. These deal primarily with control of the governmental body of the entity, their financial responsibility, who is responsible for the general debts and liabilities of the entity, and the treatment of employees. So for my example, they would be treated like a state employee. In the second category, it was identified as other factors, and there are 8 of those. These address issues of control of operations, where their funding sources come from, whether the funds come directly from tax revenue or are indirect, such as a contract or a grant, and how that applies to the state law. For example, do they have open meetings? Does the entity serve as a governmental entity or purpose? So CalPERS initiated this criteria with the proposed regulations to help assess its impact and to determine whether this entity would qualify as a contract, as a governmental plan with CalPERS. We believe it is important to move forward with implementing the proposed regulations to mitigate risk to the system. that is us as the current members and our current employers. We will soon be releasing additional information on the topic, including an applicant questionnaire to help us make that determination. As we begin our outreach efforts, we're releasing a circular letter soon, including both the criteria and the agency questionnaire. We are trying to provide some upfront information so prospective school employers will be more knowledgeable about the requirements to participate. I am seeking your assistance for volunteers to help me in this education outreach to this prospective school employers. If there was anybody that would like to volunteer, I'm looking at certain folks, please, if I could get your business contact information after the meeting, that would be really helpful. Of course, it is always worth noting that the IRS and the Treasury Department can change these rules, as it could take a while. Should any changes be provided by the IRS and the Treasury Department, we would need to revisit this communication, and I would look at these folks to help me with how to communicate this. So this completes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions. All right, lunch and break are more important on your mind right now. But I'll be here, and I look forward to having some business contacts so I can help with this communication effort. Thank you.
Okay, so that completes the agenda. On the open forum, there's a couple of questions that came from outside. I just want to sort of follow up on those. One was from Kings County, I believe. Had a number of questions relating to the number of minimum days for County Office of Education administrators. We'll pass it on to the program area, and then they'll respond back to you directly on that one. And then there was another question on the contribution rates for CalSTRS being set for next fiscal year, and if so, what are the rates? Peter, I'm assuming we're working on a circular on that. But just to give you a heads up, the board did adopt the contribution rates in April. And I can sort of tell you what they are. But there will be something going out to all the employers. But for the employer contribution for elected officials of employee organizations, for the 2% and 60 members, the contribution rate beginning July 1, 2013 is 10.276%. For the 2% and 62 members, it take effect immediately. If you happen to have any brand new members who are also elected to a union, which would surprise me, but you never know. That's 8.25%. That's the employer contribution. For the reduced workload program, again, for the 2% and 60 members, the contribution rate is 10.276%. But because of the requirements of the reduced workload program, no 2% and 62 member would be eligible for reduced workload program for a number of years, so there was no contribution rate set for that. There are contribution rates also set for the purchase of service credit. You all remember that airtime is gone, but all the other service credit is still there. There's different rates for the 2% at 60 versus 2% at 62 members that will be included in the circular. The one thing I want to make sure people are aware of is that the way the contribution rates were set, they were based on decile years of age. So there's one rate for 20 to 29, one for 30 to 39, and so on. The board has asked us to take a look at having a finer set of rates, so it either would be done every 5 years or every year of age. So what they did is they adopted the rates that you're going to be getting that are slightly higher than what they were last year will only apply for purchase of service credit prior to the end of the calendar year. And then in September, we'll go back to the board with an analysis of different approaches, and then they will adopt rates for the balance of the fiscal year. But as I said, we are preparing a circular on that you should be receiving relatively soon. Any questions about any of that? And otherwise, I'll open it up to any other questions. Yeah.
Hi, Heather from Ventura County Office of Ed. I have a question from our staff. They're wondering if it would be possible to revise the STRS report to add a format or a comment field that would allow them to enter information about the extra duty time that they worked. I guess they spend a lot of time every month researching that.
I'll turn that over to Peter.
Peter Haley, CalSTRS. I don't know.
Thank you, Peter.
Bill's frantically writing notes, so I think Bill can probably do a little research, and we'll check to see if there's more room on the report. I know there's always been a limitation on the report, so we'll take a look. There's a couple other options, other topics I thought I want to cover too, is that I know everyone loved the credible compensation guide that we took off. Well, we're not putting it back on either. But we are going to work on regulations, and so we're working on those now. Plus, we're working on statutory changes. So the combination of those two should replace the guide and actually be more definitive than the guide. The guide caused some problems for us because it said if you're going to either be DB, DBS, or not credible, and a lot of times it was misinterpreted. And so as a result, we ended up having issues of saying, oh, it should have been a DBS or it shouldn't have been credible at all. And so what we're going to do with the regulations as well as the statutory definition changes is put clarity on that so it is very definitive. And we're working on that now, so I will probably be reaching out to this entire community to ask if they would like to participate in the discussion of the regulations. And before we actually go to the formal comment period, I'd kind of like to get some informal comments from you so I'd make sure that I can cover it accurately in the formal. So, and if everyone probably have my emails, if not, it's phaley@calstrs.com. You can also send your questions to the reps, and they can get back to me on it.
Any other questions?
Francis from LA County, and it's actually both for PERS and STRS. It's regarding refunds that we get on warrant from the county treasurer. There is no information as to what the refund is for. I mean, we're just getting a check. We don't know, is it for a particular district, for a particular person on a buyback? What is the issue? And we spend tons of man hours just trying to figure it out. I mean, we end up having to go to the county treasurer, ask him, you know, do you have an invoice number? Do you have something why this was issued? They'll give us their minimum information, then we have to determine where that money goes. So on any type of payment that comes back to the county offices, can something be included as to what it's for? And this is both CalPERS and CalSTRS.
CalSTRS, I'll pass that on to our financial services division that actually does the reversals. There should be something on the remittance advice, but we'll check with them. Yeah.
Francis, you're going to have to provide me an example of a refund because from what I understand from fiscal services, we don't offer refunds. We do credits through the receivable, so I'll have to take this back.
The other topic is you might have recently received a survey, and we're trying to assess our customer service and improve our service to you. So we're going to open up the period for another week so that your districts can also respond. So please encourage your districts as well as the staff in the county office to respond to the survey. We do want to improve our services.
Any other question from Carmen?
There's a question from Lisa Hotchkiss from Santa Rosa. She wants to know, will PERS rates be available for 13-14 as well?
That's a CalPERS question.
CalPERS question.
Contribution rates.
Can we get Renee a microphone?
We didn't hear the question. I'm sorry. What was it again?
Contribution rates for CalPERS for next year.
Okay, so the contribution rates for employers, right? Sorry, I was busy trying to solve a different problem. So the contribution rates for employers for next fiscal year should already be on my CalPERS. So you... Okay, then we'll have to check into that. They should have, because I know all of our valuation reports were all issued months ago.
Normally it comes in the board.
Okay, so I will have to check into, what Vina was saying was that they're not on there for school employers. And so I don't know why that is, so I will have to follow up on that. But I can answer the question on this. This is not from the PERF. It's not from the regular fund. This is from the replacement benefit fund. So this one is someone who is receiving a replacement benefit. And we are required by law to clean out this account at the end of every year. And so what happens at the beginning of the year, this is for someone who's paid in excess of the IRC 415. And so there is a replacement benefit that is paid to those people that are highly paid. And so what happens is we have to collect money at the beginning of the year for what we anticipate the benefit to be paid out. At the end of the year, we must close out that account. That's part of the requirements for operating this RBP, replacement benefit plan. And so this is just a check that all of the funds were not used based on the calculation that was done. I can find that out for you.
And actually, slightly different type of around contribution rates. I forgot to mention that at CalSTRS, the board set the normal cost for the 2% of 62 members at the same normal cost that it had previously set it at. So the employees, the member contribution for 2% of 62 will stay at 8% for next fiscal year. Just in case you were wondering about that. So it'll still be the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different question, but I think you might know the answer. When a member retires from both systems, PERS and STRS at the same time, and how both systems use the highest final comp to give the benefit. Let's say the employee was under PERS only less than 3 years, let's say 30 months, and under STRS, they were like 20 years. So, and the PERS job was the highest paying job. So are you going to use the final comp of PERS because they only use 1 year, but the employee didn't have a 3-year employment there? So what will STRS use? Whatever they use for 1 year final comp?
I will actually have to defer that to our service retirement division, and I don't think there's any reps here from service retirement, unless, Valerie, do you happen to know the concurrent at all? Okay.
We will confirm it. I think we don't use the final compensation, we use the compensation earnable. So it's a 3-year final comp member. As from our perspective, we will use 3 consecutive years of the highest compensation earnable.
The PERS side, which was the highest side, they didn't have 3 years, so you will.
But they had some other years, but they had a total of 3 years somewhere.
You will just enter zeros then.
Well,
because they were only employed for 30 months.
Well, then what happened to them? Then they went to CalSTRS?
Yes.
Well, then we'll use 2 years of one and 1 year of the other.
So you will use them the other
We'll
one.
confirm that, but that's, I believe, the way it works. But we will double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Okay, thank you. And I wanted to make sure I heard that piece right. When you were giving the rates for 2013-14, you said for 2% at 60, 10 point?
I think I said 10.276.
10 point, oh, okay, just want to make sure I heard that right.
Yeah, that's for reduced workload and the elected officials.
Thank you.
Right. And actually, I think Michelle would like to do a little update here also.
A little update. I just want to piggyback on what Peter said about improving our services. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Michelle Johnson. I'm the Assistant Director for Member Account Services, and I oversee employer services and account services, so the production side of the house. And we've received some really good feedback from some of you about some of our services, but we also had an internal audit, and we have some gaps in our processes. So long story short, we're doing a reorg. Yeah, I love the blank stares. We're going to send you guys some communication this month, next month, and then update you fully at the next EAC as to if your reps have changed, different assignments. It doesn't impact what you do to us. It impacts what we're doing internally. But I think the biggest impact would be you might not have the same rep. Okay, we need happier news now. Is it lunchtime yet?
All the reps are great.
They are, and we have 4 new ones coming out of training. There's a lot of promotional opportunities, so we've had some turnover, and it's a great time to get things streamlined before any upcoming big projects.
We're gonna make sure that all the information going out is consistent too. And so that's the reason why we're doing so much in the training. And Bill had mentioned is going out there and looking at the training modules. It's the same that staff are looking at it internally to make sure that everything is consistent. So hopefully the answers you're getting from one rep are the same as the answers you get from someone else.
And if not, I want to know. Please.
All right. Any other questions for CalSTRS?
Any other questions for anybody? Yeah, hold on.
Teresa Cooper from Stanislaus. This is for CalPERS. I've been trying to contact CalPERS to find out who I need to speak to start a process for moving a charter school from one county into our county for next fiscal year. The contact I did have, I've called several times and the voicemail's full and no email responses back from that person. So who should I contact?
This is Ruben Jimenez. You can go ahead and contact me, and we'll trade
Okay,
contact
thank you.
information.
All right. Did you want to?
Anything else?
I do have 2 questions.
Okay, so.
Wait, I have a
Well,
question.
we have a late-breaking question.
Ramona Coker with Stanislaus COE. I have a pepper question. If I have for PERS, if I have a member who is full-time with a non-school agency, and we hire them to do part-time work with us, we're not able to take contributions on them because they're currently full-time. I'm not sure how to set them up, because if they were to come to us within 6 months, they would be classic. But I'm not able to set them up in our system. If they were to leave the other agency and then continue working with us, we would set them up as a classic. But if they had a break with us and the other agency and then came back, they wouldn't be PEPRA. How would I deal with something like I have this right now?
So your first part was the person works full-time at one agency and then now works part-time with you.
Also.
When you submit that enrollment, since they have an active appointment currently with a public agency or with another PERS employer, they automatically get set up as classic.
Right.
The system validates only when there's a separation of greater than 6 months when they go from like a school to a public agency or a public agency to a school. So if they're working now currently full-time, then they'll always be classic.
Okay. So even though I'm not reporting earnings and contributions on them.
Well, that's the other thing is, it's always been said since I've been born on this project, and
yes,
that you need to enroll people as hired when you determine they're a member, regardless if you know that they are a member somewhere else, and you need to report earnings and payroll accordingly, after which time eventually something will be triggered to our membership unit for determination. And if it's determined that you are now the overtime position, you'll be notified to adjust the payroll records and back out. The reason why we have that is because we don't know or have the ability to monitor whether or not they, at that full-time with another agency, either be a school office or a public agency, are they working truly full-time, or are there certain periods they're full-time and other times they're half-time? So we have to have all earnings until you're notified to stop reporting.
Okay, I have issue with that. Because if I have this all the time. I have where they're full-time with one of my districts. They work for a second district. I can see their 40 hours a week. If they are 180 days, 8 hours a day, and we pay them even payments, they may have only 160 hours in the month or 153 hours for the month because of how it's separated out over 11 months. Maybe they start in August, their last day is in June 3rd, but they get 11 consecutive or 11 equal payments. You're not going to see that they're full-time. I, on the other hand, since they're one of my districts, I know for certain they're working 40 hours a week. If I was to report both payments, there is no way for you to determine that they're full-time in the one position. How does that work?
So you're not reporting up to 40 hours a week?
No, they're 40 hours a week with District A for, say, 180 days, 11 months. They're working at District B 10 hours a week. They're already working 40 hours at the District A. The additional hours are non-creditable because that's greater than 40 hours.
Correct. It would be considered overtime under 206
But how would you know?
36.1.
If I was reporting for both, how would you know?
Well, when the payroll reportings hit, there's a threshold that's built into the system that would notify us. Then we determine which position is contributory and which position is
But
not
that
contributory.
threshold is what? Because if it's 180 days divided equally over 11 months,
It's a percentage. It's a percentage over an amount, and I don't know exactly what that percentage is.
because at the same scenario, if the person was 7 hours a day at District A for 180 days a year, then I would want to take it at District B. But I mean, I don't see how you would be able to determine.
Again, I know that there's some thresholds built into the system that will then trigger the information to come to my area to look to see if there's an overtime situation or not. That's one of the reasons why we ask that the employers enroll their employees per each of their positions. Then we make that determination. I know in another school district, we got a listing of a bunch of people who are working at two different, where they have determined that they are being reported through more than one employer under CalPERS, and we're taking that listing and we're reviewing. Yeah, this one is working full-time somewhere else, and we're going to make the other, some of them we're finding they didn't even enroll them. So our direction to them is enroll them, and we'll make it a non-contributory appointment.
Okay.
So this question, I mean, last 4 or 5 SEAC meetings I've been to, this question kind of comes up.
Right.
And I think the real question is, what is your guys' threshold? I mean, that's the bottom line that we can't ever give you is it 120% then something triggers? Is it 110% then something triggers? Is it 105% of service that something triggers? Right now, all we can tell you is that report as earned, and then over a quarter or a couple of periods of time, there is an internal trigger that says, hey, we may have possibly an overtime position, which then generates something to the membership unit to do. I don't know. I can't give you that specific threshold so you can say, okay, I know, report up to this percentage and then stop after that, because there's a whole algorithm of math that goes into how these things get triggered based on fluctuations of time and earnings. And we just can't give you that.
I'm just saying that both
time.
positions could, combined for hours, could be less than, say, 170 hours. But they could be full-time.
Right, and if once they go over overtime, that's where we look at it. They review it, and if it's determined that it is an overtime position, even though you may already know, then we'll just have to notify you. And unfortunately, that is what you guys also don't like, is the work to back out all the payroll. And that is, I mean, it is how we have to manage it, especially when they move from one county office to another or from one public agency to the other, is report as earned. We have internal system built to trigger things, to notify the right units to do the determinations and notify you whether or not payroll has to be backed out or not.
Okay.
One is for Peter or Michelle. Is the reorganization going to have impact on communications on CB and DB? Is it also part of the?
The question is, are communications going to have an impact?
Well, just in terms of, I guess, who they work with on DB versus CB.
Yes.
Okay. You don't have to go any farther than this one. I think they just want to know. So, and then there was a question that for CalPERS around reporting earnings and contributions for someone who's already full time. They'll have to answer that offline. And then and then there's another one that says what we really need is for CalPERS to have the ability to report overtime earnings and no contributions. So I'm passing that on to CalPERS.
Point taken.
Okay. Anything else? Oh, we got a question over here. Oh, wait a minute. Let's first respond to that.
Flores. So once we have marked the record as non-contributory, then no contributions are going to be expected for that position. So the overtime position.
Question here?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up, Victoria from Marin County. Can I actually see a show of hands of anybody who's had a non-contributory appointment determined in the system based on overtime reporting? 1, 2, maybe? I'm just wondering, since we're all anticipating that it's not going to work very well, if it has worked for anybody here.
Hold on, Vina. Please get a microphone.
I was just going to check. I mean, we haven't started. We do have overtime people. Now, we haven't started reporting to PERS yet, but I don't see it any different than retirees. I don't see any different, like,
No,
they
but
have the same
collecting
code.
the contributions, even though you know you shouldn't, and how long does it take to be notified? Yeah, because we're talking about W-2Cs and 941s and districts that are upset and district
I see.
contributions and fiscal year budgets and right, taking money from the employee when you
I
know you
see.
shouldn't be. And how long does it take for us to get that notification?
So if you guys have situations where you think they're in an overtime situation, by all means, contact me. I have some business cards with my email address, and we can look at those.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks.
All right.
Anything else? Okay. So the next meeting is on August 7th. We'll go back to the, at least the plan at this point is to go back to having the CalPERS in the morning and CalSTRS in the afternoon. Is there any particular items other than just the usual kinds of things around legislation, implementation of AB 340 that you'd like us to include? Any other issues you want us to? Vina, hold on. Let's wait for a microphone. We'll just get Vina a microphone. Just.
Her lapel mic.
They won't have to go back and forth, but it's a good exercise for them.
There you go.
I have 2 agenda items for the next meeting from STRS is, I want to understand the audit process that STRS has, and when we go through the audit and we find out everything is okay and all, and then later on comp review units will say something, give us more documentation. Let's say for an example, the superintendent's pay is not, should have been reported, this and that. We don't understand because sometimes when the districts have audits, they think they have presented all the documentation. So everything is okay with them and they can continue the same practice. But sometimes then the comp review has their different angle of looking. So we just want to understand how it works between comp review and audits.
Okay, hold on. Peter will speak to that.
I could probably address that right now. A lot of times the audits will go out there and they may not look at specifically the contracts of maybe the administrators. They kind of look at a broader perspective of the district. And so they may not go into the same detail that the comp review unit is. But they are now coordinating their efforts, and so I don't think you'll see that difference anymore.
Because when they have an audit, they feel good, okay, everything is in order, they can continue the practice. But later on, then we get into trouble from your comp review unit.
Yeah, I mean, true, the comp review unit is looking at people normally when they go into retirement status. And so there is that possibility that they will be looked at. Sometimes when the audit unit goes out there, they're looking at people in active status. So they may not look at the ones that are retired, but it is a combination. We are trying to coordinate that effort better.
Okay. And second agenda item is about charter schools. I just wanted to see if we can have more information about county's responsibility and obligations.
With respect to reporting, you mean? Or?
Yeah, or if we want to discontinue our services to some charter school, what is the impact? I mean, I just want to understand what's our role and responsibility. Is it between us and the charter school, whether we offer our services or not, to do their reporting?
Okay, we'll see what information we can provide for next time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other items for the agenda for August? If not, then we are adjourned. Thank you.